Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you had a great break. And if you're just back from your break, welcome back to work. And if you went back to work yesterday, I'm sorry for your loss. With that being said, before we get on to the main video, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It really does help. And if you'd like to support the work that I do here, you're welcome to buy me a coffee. Couple of announcements just before we start the video. There are 3 articles I wrote on my Substack. You're welcome to read them. The 3 articles specifically deal with my time in England and some of the observations I had around England whilst I was there. Another announcement just before we start the video is this clip from Ben Shapiro. I'd actually follow the link. It's very insightful. Now, once you follow the link, you'll also understand why I can't make a comment on it on YouTube, because I might get struck. But it's still very insightful, seeing as this is the White House. And on to a final comment. Today is Holocaust Memorial Day, where the world remembers the 6 million Jews that were killed in the Holocaust. I did issue a Substack this morning on this very topic, and again, you're welcome to go and read that article when you have time. So let's get on to the main video of today. So firstly, for those of you who voted for Action SA, here is your daily reminder that you're an idiot. Because you may recall that Action SA voted for the VAT increase on the basis that they would provide a new budget to Parliament that could effectively mean that VAT would not be considered. They also had an assurance from Godongwana and the Finance Ministry that, don't worry, they'll check the numbers and they'll make sure that there's no VAT increase in 30 days. Now, for those of you who saw my video last week, you will notice that Godongwana said, we've considered your proposal and you're still getting a VAT increase. Further to that, Godongwana also reviewed the Action SA plan, which they would use for the new fiscal framework, and said, yeah, it's crap. We're not doing it. So we're still doing what we were going to do originally. And to that, Action SA is shocked, just like Cyril. The rest of us, not so much. Now, also referred to the Zimbabwean plan last week to issue bonds to all the farmers who had their property seized during the land grabs of the early 20s. Now, why this becomes important is that there is a group of farmers in Zimbabwe who reject the compensation deal and say that actually the compensation deal has been agreed with some farmers who don't represent the majority of farmers. Apparently, the group of farmers that are accepting this deal only account for, say, 15% of the farmers. And according to the spokesperson, Dion, compensation plan agreed actually inadequately addresses the actual theft that occurred, the land grabs. He says that apparently they were agreed with a minority of farmers so that it gave the appearance the farmers had been compensated, whilst actually in reality it was only just a few individuals. Now, the reason for this is that some 4,500 farmers lost their properties, but only around 740 farmers allegedly are due to be compensated through these new bailouts. On to other news, and that is the DA still in the GNU? And the short story of it is, yes, they are, because for those of you who didn't watch last week, I did a video whereby I alluded to the fact that the ANC had now lost support and that the DA had more support than it did. Now, you need to know the timelines for everything and how they all kind of stack up. In February, the Social Research Foundation did some polling, and they found the DA currently stood at 25%, the ANC at 32%, the MK Party at 12%, and the EFF at 6%, with the IFP at 3%. Since then, according to the Social Research Foundation, the ANC has been bleeding support. Now, the reason they've been bleeding support are because of their populist policies, such as the Appropriation Act and the NHI, National Health Insurance. Now, these specific policies have caused ANC support to drop. And according to the IRR, the latest figures are that the ANC is now at 29.7%, with the DA at 30.3%. So what this effectively means is that the DA is now polling at more popular than the ANC. Now, what this has meant is that the insiders, the parties inside of the GNU, specifically the ANC, now seem less predisposed to kick out the DA on the basis that the DA actually appears to have the popular mandate and they don't want to alienate voters. So instead, Yeah, the DA is here to stay. Because according to the pollsters, the voters are more likely to vote for the DA than the ANC. Now, one of the reasons for this is that according to a survey done by the Brenthurst Foundation, the majority of people surveyed, when asked whether the GNU was working, said yes. But you see, what's ironic about this is that whilst parties have faith in the GNU, and the GNU seems to be the only thing that's holding South Africa back from a proper full-on bankruptcy, money does, however, continue to flow out of South Africa, specifically in line with the lack of stability that the GNU seems to have given the ongoing fraught relationship with the ANC and the DA. So whilst most individuals when surveyed say that the GNU is working, money and the investors, whilst they want the GNU, don't continue to invest in South Africa because they found it to be volatile. Talking of volatile, Donald Trump has now signed an executive order shutting embassies and consulates across Africa. Does this actually include the South African embassies and consulates? And the answer at this point in time is that we don't know. Now, the reason for this is that Donald Trump is shutting down what he classes as bureaus that are working on democracy, human rights, and refugee issues. Many of these individuals, basically what you might call regime change facilities, according to Donald Trump, are no longer a good spend of taxpayer money, so he's shutting them down. However, despite all of this, according to Ronald Lamola, the United States relationship with South Africa remains well disposed. What exactly well disposed means, I have no idea. But he says that this is all in despite of geopolitical tensions. In other words, all of the kerfuffle that seems to keep occurring with all of our diplomats. According to him, the US is still keen on South Africa. And to that, I would say, dude, are you not reading the room? Like, they are not interested in South Africa in the slightest. They're offering Afrikaners free passage to the United States under these refugee programs. They're cancelling your aid left, right, and center. They're literally saying that you're on a watch list. They're talking about sanctioning the upper echelons of the ANC. To say they're well disposed is delusional at best. But despite all of this, South Africa has to now ask the question, where exactly will it get its lending from? Where will it get its investment? Now, this comes on the back that the United States appears to be inward looking at the moment, with no real help coming from them. Europe itself is having to scale back its engagements because of its overspending. China itself is having to withdraw some of its spending programs, mainly because they themselves are being subjected to economic hardship given the inward look of the United States. And this is leaving a vacuum in terms of who's going to fund what. And it does appear like the latest form of funding is actually coming from the Middle East, specifically the Gulf. Now, this lending pattern seems to have already started in places like Kenya and Zimbabwe. But according to Dean McPherson, some of our new investment grounds are going to be coming from the Gulf states. And you can let me know what you think of that in the comment section below. Now, onto a final news article of today, and that is basically why the mainstream media, the legacy media, are just full of cuck. Because according to them, last week a key election was fought in KwaZulu-Natal in what they classed as a DA stronghold. And according to them, the DA lost the election to the MK party. And this showed that there was instability in the DA and that the DA was no longer at the forefront of the electorate. In other words, they were losing their grip, with obviously the seismic move moving to the MK party. So what is the actual story behind this? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure that the actual story comes as no surprise. Now, what actually happened is that in the specific area, Action SA suggested to its voters that they should support an independent candidate rather than the DA. And Action SA went out to canvass for an independent party member because, the DA is evil. Now, according to that, what ended up happening is that Action SA split the vote. And following the voter split, this left the MK party a easy access to the routes to power. Now, yet again, we are seeing Action SA working in only one fashion, and that is they will do anything they can to undermine the efforts of the DA, even if it means handing over power to the MK party. This is not a real party, it's a party of gripe. This is almost like John Steenhuisen and Herman Mashaba had an illicit affair and John never called him back, because the level of animosity is just one of spurned lover. It's terrible. And I yet again say, Action SA is not a real party. It is such a joke party. In any case, the legacy media picked this all up as an apparent voter shift to the MK party, in order to create the MK party as being the new boogeyman to replace the EFF. Don't be scared of the EFF anymore, guys. Be scared of the MK party, because they're on the ascendancy. Like, this is just pathetic reporting. This is not what happened. The voter split, Action SA fought directly against the DA. This left the MK party an easy path to power. Reported how it is. Action SA are a bunch of slimy individuals. But anyway, it's just my views, ladies and gentlemen. Tell you who else has a view, and that is the IMF. Because according to the IMF, because of everything that's happening to South Africa, specifically in line with the Trump administration, our growth forecasts have been cut in half. Now, while this is important, is that effectively our budget that was proposed, the controversial budget, the budget was created with our current growth forecasts in mind. And if we halve our growth trajectories, that means that the budget is basically a work of fiction. So yes, all the kerfuffle over a budget, that's probably never going to happen because the economy ain't doing that great. But then globally, no one's doing that great. In any case, this is just the news for today. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Until tomorrow, bye.